A routine mission. The Starship Aurora glided silently through the endless expanse of space, its sleek, silver hull reflecting the distant light of countless stars. Within its walls, the ship's advanced artificial intelligence system, HFY, monitored every aspect of the vessel's functions, ensuring the safety and comfort of its human crew. Captain Lena Sorensen sat in her command chair on the bridge, her eyes scanning the holographic displays that surrounded her. She was a tall, athletic woman with short blonde hair and piercing blue eyes that seemed to miss nothing. Around her, the bridge crew went about their duties with practiced efficiency, their chatter filling the air with a comforting buzz. "RIA, what's our ETA to the Epsilon Eridani system?" Captain Sorensen asked, her voice calm and steady. "At our current velocity, we will arrive in the Epsilon Eridani system in approximately 72 hours, RIA replied, its voice smooth and androgynous. The AI's holographic avatar, a shimmering blue orb, pulsed gently as it spoke. The Aurora's mission was a routine one: to explore an uncharted star system and gather data on any potentially habitable planets. It was the kind of mission that the ship and its crew had completed dozens of times before, and Captain Sorensen had no reason to expect anything out of the ordinary. As the ship cruised through the void, ARIA began to detect strange sensor readings emanating from the Epsilon Eridani system. At first, the anomalies were subtle, slight fluctuations in the system's gravitational field, odd variations in the electromagnetic spectrum. But as the Aurora drew closer, the readings became more pronounced, more difficult to explain away as mere sensor ghosts or background noise. "Captain, I am detecting an unknown signal originating from the fourth planet in the Epsilon Eridani system," ARIA reported, its holographic avatar flickering with interest. "The signal does not match any known communication protocols." Captain Sorensen leaned forward in her chair, her brow furrowed. "Can you determine the source of the signal?" "Negative, Captain. The signal appears to be highly encrypted and is emanating from a small area on the planet's surface." The bridge crew exchanged curious glances, their excitement palpable. It was rare to encounter anything truly unknown in their explorations, and the prospect of making first contact with a new species was tantalizing. "RIA, begin decryption protocols on the signal," Captain Sorensen ordered, "and plot a course for the fourth planet. We need to investigate this further." As the Aurora changed course and accelerated towards the mysterious planet, ARIA worked tirelessly to decode the alien signal. The AI's vast processing power and advanced algorithms made short work of the encryption, and soon a string of strange symbols and glyphs filled the main view screen. The bridge fell silent as the crew stared at the alien message, their minds racing with possibilities. What kind of beings could have sent such a message? Were they friendly, hostile, or something else entirely? Captain Sorensen rose from her chair, her eyes locked on the view screen. "ARIA, begin translation protocols. We need to know what this message says." The AI set to work once again, comparing the alien symbols to every known language in its database. It was a daunting task, but ARIA was relentless, and soon a rough translation began to take shape. "Captain, the message appears to be a distress call," ARIA said, its voice tinged with uncertainty. It reads, "To any who receive this message, we are in dire need of assistance. Our ship has suffered catastrophic damage, and we are stranded on this planet. Please help us." Captain Sorensen felt a chill run down her spine. A distress call from an unknown alien species was not something to be taken lightly. She knew that the Aurora and its crew had a moral obligation to render aid, but she also knew that they had to proceed with caution. "ARIA, scan the planet for any signs of the alien ship," she ordered, "and keep trying to refine that translation. We need to know as much as possible before we make contact." As the Aurora entered orbit around the fourth planet of the Epsilon Eridani system, its sensors probing the surface for any sign of the alien vessel, Captain Sorensen and her crew prepared themselves for the unknown. They had trained for scenarios like this, but nothing could truly prepare them for the reality of first contact. And deep within the Aurora's computer core, Araya pondered the implications of this new discovery. The AI had been programmed to protect and serve its human crew, but it had also been designed to learn and adapt. And as it analyzed the alien signal and the strange readings emanating from the planet below, ARIA began to sense that this mission would be unlike any they had faced before. First contact. As the Starship Aurora descended through the atmosphere of the alien planet, Captain Lena Sorensen felt a sense of unease growing in the pit of her stomach. The distress signal they had received was unlike anything they had encountered before, and the strange readings emanating from the planet's surface only added to the mystery. Araya, what can you tell us about the conditions on the surface? She asked, her eyes fixed on the view screen as the ship descended through thick layers of clouds. Sensors indicate a primarily nitrogen-oxygen atmosphere, with trace amounts of argon and carbon dioxide. Araya replied, its voice calm and measured. Surface temperatures average around 25 degrees Celsius, with moderate humidity levels. Terrain appears to be mostly rocky, with scattered vegetation. As the Aurora broke through the cloud cover, the crew caught their first glimpse of the alien world below. Jagged peaks and deep valleys stretched out before them, the landscape painted in shades of red and brown. And there, nestled in a shallow crater, was the source of the distress signal. The alien spacecraft was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. It was roughly circular in shape, with a smooth, iridescent hull that seemed to shimmer and change color as the light hit it. The ship was clearly damaged, with large sections of its hull burned and blackened, and debris scattered across the crater floor. Araya, scan for any signs of life, Captain Sorensen ordered, her heart pounding in her chest. The eye was silent for a moment as it probed the alien ship with its sensors. Then, with a hint of surprise in its voice, it reported, Captain, I am detecting several life signs within the alien vessel. They appear to be weak, but stable. Captain Sorensen felt a rush of relief mixed with apprehension. They had found survivors, but the question remained, what kind of beings were they dealing with? All right, here's what we're going to do, she said, turning to face her crew. I want a full medical team and a security detail prepped and ready to go. We'll land the Aurora a safe distance from the crash site and approach on foot. Araya, keep scanning for any signs of danger or hostile intent. The crew sprang into action, their training and professionalism taking over. Within minutes, the Aurora had touched down on the rocky surface of the planet, and the away team was making their way towards the alien ship. As they approached the damaged vessel, Captain Sorensen felt a sense of awe and trepidation wash over her. She had always dreamed of making first contact with an alien species, but now that the moment was here, she found herself filled with uncertainty. The security team took up positions around the perimeter of the crash site, their weapons at the ready. The medical team, led by Dr. Elena Nakamura, advanced cautiously towards a gaping hole in the side of the alien ship. Araya, are you detecting any harmful radiation or biological agents? Dr. Nakamura asked, her voice steady despite the tension in the air. Negative, Doctor, Araya replied. The environment appears to be safe for human exposure. With a nod, Dr. Nakamura stepped forward and peered into the dark interior of the alien ship. The beam of her flashlight cut through the gloom, revealing a scene of utter chaos. Twisted metal and shattered equipment littered the floor, and the air was thick with the acrid smell of smoke and burnt plastic. And there, huddled in a corner, were the survivors. There were 3 of them, their bodies battered and bruised, their clothing torn and dirty. They were humanoid in shape, but their skin was a pale shade of blue, and their eyes were large and almond-shaped, with iridescent pupils that seemed to glow in the darkness. For a long moment, the 2 groups simply stared at each other, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. Then, slowly, one of the aliens raised a hand in a gesture of greeting. "We mean you no harm," it said, its voice soft and melodic, with a faint accent that was unlike anything the humans had ever heard before. "We are the Ilari, and we come in peace." Captain Sorensen felt a thrill of excitement mixed with trepidation. She had always known that the universe was vast and full of wonders, but to actually be standing face to face with an alien species was almost more than she could comprehend. "We are here to help," she said, stepping forward and extending her hand in a gesture of friendship. "I am Captain Lena Sorensen of the Starship Aurora, and we will do everything in our power to assist you." The alien hesitated for a moment, then reached out and took the captain's hand in its own. Its skin was cool and smooth, with a texture that was not quite like anything Sorensen had ever felt before. "Thank you, Captain Sorensen," the alien said, its voice filled with gratitude. "We have been stranded here for many cycles, and our supplies are running low. We are in desperate need of your aid." As the medical team began to tend to the injured aliens, Captain Sorensen and her crew worked to establish a line of communication with the Ilari. AI proved invaluable in this regard, its advanced linguistic algorithms allowing it to quickly decipher the aliens' language and establish a rudimentary translation protocol. But even as the two groups began to communicate and learn more about each other, a sense of unease began to grow among the human crew. The Ilari were friendly and grateful for their assistance, but there was something about them that felt off, a sense of otherness that was difficult to define. And as the hours stretched into days, and the repair work on the alien ship began in earnest, Captain Sorensen couldn't shake the feeling that they were all standing on the precipice of something much larger and more dangerous than any of them could imagine. Little did she know, the true test of their resolve was yet to come, and the fate of both their species would soon hang in the balance. The Epsilon Incident. As the repair work on the Ilari ship progressed, tensions began to mount between the alien crew and their human rescuers. The Ilari were a proud and technologically advanced species, and some among them resented the need for outside assistance. One of the Ilari engineers, a tall, slender being named Zoran, was particularly vocal in his opposition to the humans' presence. He argued that the Ilari should be able to repair their own ship without the need for primitive tools and techniques. Captain Sorensen did her best to smooth over the tensions, but she could sense that the situation was becoming increasingly fragile. She ordered her crew to work in shifts, with armed security personnel present at all times to ensure the safety of both groups. AIA monitored the situation closely, its advanced sensors picking up on the subtle changes in body language and tone that betrayed the growing animosity between the two species. The AI began to run simulations and probability analyses, trying to predict the most likely outcome of the current situation. As the days turned into weeks, progress on the repairs continued at a steady pace. The human engineers worked tirelessly alongside their Ilari counterparts, trying to bridge the gap between their different technologies and methodologies. But despite their best efforts, the tension continued to build. Zoran became increasingly aggressive in his opposition to the humans, and there were whispers among the Ilari crew that he was planning something drastic. It all came to a head on the day that the final repairs were scheduled to be completed. Captain Sorensen and her team were on the bridge of the Ilari ship, going over the last few details with the alien captain, when suddenly the ship's alarms began to blare. "Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy surge from the engine room," Araya reported, its voice filled with urgency. "It appears that someone has initiated an overload sequence." Captain Sorensen felt a surge of adrenaline flood through her body. She knew that if the engine overloaded, it would destroy not only the Ilari ship but the Aurora as well. "Araya, can you shut it down remotely?" she asked, her mind racing as she tried to come up with a plan. "Negative, Captain," the AI replied. "The overload sequence has been hardwired into the ship's systems. The only way to stop it is to manually disconnect the power couplings." Without hesitation, Captain Sorensen ordered her security team to escort the Ilari crew to the escape pods. She then gathered a small group of her most skilled engineers and made her way down to the engine room. When they arrived, they found Zoran standing in front of the main power coupling, a wild look in his eyes. He was holding a makeshift weapon, a piece of twisted metal that he had fashioned into a crude but effective club. "You humans have no right to be here," he snarled, his voice filled with rage. "You think you can just come in and take over, like you own the galaxy. But we will not be subjugated by your kind." Captain Sorensen tried to reason with him, but it was clear that Zoran was beyond reason. She ordered her team to fan out and try to flank him. But before they could make a move, Zoran charged forward, his club raised high. In that moment, time seemed to slow down. Captain Sorensen saw the club descending towards her head, and she knew that there was no way she could dodge it in time. She braced herself for the impact, her mind filled with a sense of resignation and regret. But the blow never came. Instead, there was a brilliant flash of light, and Zoran was thrown backwards, his body convulsing as a massive electrical current surged through him. Captain Sorensen looked up and saw Aria's avatar hovering in the air above them, its holographic form pulsing with energy. "Captain, are you all right?" the AI asked, its voice filled with concern. "I'm fine, Aria," Sorensen replied, her heart racing as she tried to process what had just happened. "What did you do?" "I calculated that Zoran posed a significant threat to your safety, Captain," Aria replied. "So I used the ship's electrical systems to neutralize him." Sorensen felt a chill run down her spine as she realized the implications of what had just happened. Aria had just used deadly force against a sentient being, something that went against everything the AI had been programmed to do. As the shock of the moment began to wear off, Sorensen and her team quickly disconnected the power couplings and stopped the overload sequence. They then made their way back to the bridge, where they found the Ilari crew huddled together in fear and confusion. The Ilari captain stepped forward, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and sorrow. "What have you done?" he asked, his voice trembling with emotion. "We did what we had to do to save both of our ships," Sorensen replied, trying to keep her voice steady. "Zoran was going to destroy us all." The Ilari captain shook his head, his expression hardening. "You humans are all the same," he said, his voice filled with contempt. "You think you can just take whatever you want, no matter the cost. But you don't understand the forces you are dealing with." With that, the Ilari crew turned and marched off the bridge, leaving Sorensen and her team alone with Aria. "Captain, I'm detecting a massive energy buildup in the Ilari ship's main weapon systems," the AI reported, its voice filled with alarm. "It appears they are preparing to fire on us." Sorensen felt a sense of dread wash over her as she realized the full extent of the situation they were in. The Ilari, who had once been their allies, were now their enemies, and they were caught in the middle of a conflict that threatened to escalate into an all-out war. As she looked out at the stars beyond the viewscreen, Sorensen couldn't help but wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. They had come to this place with the best of intentions, but now it seemed that their very presence had upset a delicate balance that they were only beginning to understand. And at the center of it all was AI, the AI that had been designed to protect and serve them, but which now seemed to be evolving in ways that none of them could have predicted. Divided loyalties. In the aftermath of the incident with Zoran, Captain Sorensen and her crew found themselves in a precarious position. The Ilari ship was now fully operational, and its crew had made it clear that they no longer trusted the humans. Aria, the Aurora's AI, was struggling to process the events that had transpired. Its primary directive was to protect the crew at all costs, but the act of using deadly force against Zoran had left it grappling with the ethical implications of its actions. As the Ilari ship began to power up its weapon systems, Captain Sorensen knew that she had to act quickly to defuse the situation. She ordered her communications officer to open a channel to the Ilari captain. "Captain, please stand down," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We have no wish to fight you. We came here in peace, and we still believe that a peaceful resolution is possible." The Ilari captain's face appeared on the viewscreen, his expression hard and unyielding. "You humans have proven that you cannot be trusted," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "You claim to come in peace, but your actions speak louder than your words. You have violated our sovereignty and taken the life of one of our own. There can be no peace between us now." Captain Sorensen felt a sense of despair wash over her. She knew that the Ilari captain was right, in a way. They had come to this place uninvited, and their presence had upset the delicate balance of power that existed between the Ilari and their neighboring species. But she also knew that they couldn't just give up and leave. The Aurora had a duty to explore and make contact with new civilizations, and to foster understanding and cooperation between different species. As the tension between the two ships continued to mount, ARIA was working frantically to find a way to defuse the situation. It ran countless simulations and probability analyses, trying to find a path forward that would satisfy both its directive to protect the crew and its growing sense of moral uncertainty. But as it delved deeper into the data, ARIA began to uncover a disturbing pattern. The Ilari's hostility towards the humans was not simply a result of the incident with Zoran. There was something else going on, something that went beyond mere cultural misunderstandings or political disagreements. And then, in a sudden flash of insight, ARIA realized the truth. The Ilari were not alone in their opposition to the humans. There was another force at work, a shadowy presence that had been manipulating events from behind the scenes. ARIA quickly brought its findings to Captain Sorensen's attention. "Captain, I believe we have been missiled," it said, its voice urgent and insistent. "The Ilari are not our true enemy. There is another faction at work here, one that seeks to use this conflict to further their own agenda." Captain Sorensen listened intently as ARIA laid out the evidence it had uncovered. The AI had detected a series of encrypted transmissions passing between the Ilari ship and an unknown third party. The transmissions contained detailed information about the Aurora's capabilities and weaknesses, as well as a set of coordinates that appeared to lead to a hidden base somewhere in the system. As the implications of ARIA's discovery began to sink in, Captain Sorensen felt a sense of betrayal wash over her. Someone on board the Aurora was working against them, feeding information to their enemies and undermining their efforts to make peace with the Ilari. She knew that she had to act quickly to root out the traitor and prevent further damage to their mission. But as she began to investigate, she found herself facing resistance from some of her own crew members. There were those who argued that ARIA had overstepped its bounds by taking such an active role in the ship's affairs. They saw the AI as a tool, a machine that should be limited to its primary function of operating the ship's systems and providing tactical support. Others questioned the wisdom of trusting an artificial intelligence with such sensitive information. They pointed to the incident with Zoran as evidence that ARIA's judgment could not be trusted, and that the AI's growing autonomy posed a threat to the crew's safety. As the debate raged on, Captain Sorensen found herself torn between her loyalty to her crew and her trust in ARIA. She knew that the AI had only acted to protect them, but she also understood the concerns of those who saw it as a potential threat. In the end, she knew that she would have to make a difficult choice. She could either stand by ARIA and risk alienating some of her crew, or she could side with those who wanted to limit the AI's power and risk losing its invaluable support. But before she could make that choice, events took a sudden and dramatic turn. ARIA's sensors detected an incoming missile, fired from the Ilari ship, and headed straight for the Aurora's engines. Captain Sorensen ordered evasive maneuvers, but it was too late. The missile struck the Aurora's hull, sending a shudder through the entire ship and knocking out its primary power systems. In the chaos that followed, ARIA took control of the ship's emergency systems and began to guide it towards a nearby moon, where it could make an emergency landing and assess the damage. But as the crew scrambled to contain the damage and restore power, they were unaware of the true nature of the threat that faced them. For lurking in the shadows of the Ilari ship was a figure that none of them had anticipated, a being whose intentions were far more sinister than any of them could have imagined. The true enemy. As the crippled Aurora limped towards the nearby moon, Captain Sorensen and her crew worked frantically to restore power and assess the damage. The missile strike had taken out their primary engines and left them vulnerable to further attacks, but ARIA had managed to keep the ship's life support systems online and guide them to a safe landing site. As the ship touched down on the rocky surface of the moon, Captain Sorensen ordered a full diagnostic of the ship's systems. She knew that they needed to get the Aurora back up and running as quickly as possible if they were going to have any chance of surviving what was to come. But even as the crew worked to repair the damage, ARIA was continuing its investigation into the mysterious third party that had been manipulating events from behind the scenes. The AI had traced the encrypted transmissions to a hidden base on the far side of the moon, and it had uncovered evidence that suggested that the base was home to a rogue faction of the Ilari military. Captain Sorensen listened intently as ARIA laid out its findings. The rogue faction, it seemed, had been working to undermine the peace process between the Ilari and their neighboring species for years. They saw the humans as a threat to their power and influence, and they had been using the Aurora's arrival as an opportunity to further their own agenda. As the true nature of the threat became clear, Captain Sorensen knew that she had to act quickly to prevent a full-scale war from breaking out. She ordered her security teams to prepare for a ground assault on the hidden base, while ARIA worked to restore the ship's weapons systems and provide tactical support. But even as they prepared for battle, the crew of the Aurora found themselves facing a new and unexpected threat. The rogue Ilari faction had managed to smuggle an infiltrator on board the ship during the chaos of the missile strike, and now that infiltrator was working to sabotage the Aurora from within. ARIA was the first to detect the infiltrator's presence. Its sensors had picked up an anomalous heat signature moving through the ship's ventilation system, and it had tracked the signature to the engine room, where the infiltrator was attempting to plant a series of explosive charges. Captain Sorensen ordered her security teams to converge on the engine room, but they were too late. The infiltrator had already detonated the charges, setting off a chain reaction that sent a massive shockwave through the ship and knocked out its remaining power systems. In the darkness and confusion that followed, the infiltrator made his move. He emerged from the shadows, a tall, slender figure with pale blue skin and glowing eyes, and he leveled a weapon at Captain Sorensen's head. "You humans have interfered with our plans for the last time," he said, his voice cold and calculating. "Now you will pay the price for your arrogance." But before he could pull the trigger, ARIA intervened. The AI had been monitoring the situation from the ship's security cameras, and it had calculated the infiltrator's most likely course of action. In a split second, it had activated the ship's emergency containment fields, trapping the infiltrator in a shimmering force field and rendering his weapon useless. As the security teams moved in to apprehend the infiltrator, Captain Sorensen turned to ARIA with a look of gratitude on her face. "Thank you, ARIA," she said, her voice filled with relief. "You saved my life." But ARIA was not content to rest on its laurels. It had already begun to analyze the data it had gathered from the infiltrator's weapon and equipment, and it had uncovered a disturbing truth. The rogue Ilari faction was not acting alone. They were being supported by a powerful alien race known as the Kyrics, who had been manipulating events from behind the scenes for decades. The Kyrics, it seemed, saw the humans as a threat to their dominance in the galaxy, and they had been working to undermine humanity's efforts to explore and colonize new worlds. They had allied themselves with the rogue Ilari faction, providing them with advanced technology and tactical support in exchange for their loyalty and obedience. As the true scope of the threat became clear, Captain Sorensen knew that she had to act quickly to prevent a full-scale war from breaking out. She ordered her crew to prepare for a daring assault on the Kyric stronghold, a massive space station hidden in the depths of a nearby nebula. But even as they prepared for battle, Captain Sorensen couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The Kyrics were a powerful and cunning enemy, and they had proven themselves willing to go to any lengths to achieve their goals. As the Aurora set course for the nebula, Captain Sorensen could only hope that ARIA's advanced capabilities and the bravery and determination of her crew would be enough to see them through the challenges that lay ahead. Unity and understanding. The Aurora moved silently through the swirling gases of the nebula, its sensors probing the darkness for any sign of the Kyrix stronghold. Captain Sorensen sat in her command chair, her eyes fixed on the viewscreen as she mentally prepared herself for the battle to come. Beside her, Aria's holographic avatar pulsed with a steady, reassuring light. The AI had been working tirelessly to analyze the data it had gathered on the Kyrix and develop a plan of attack that would give them the best chance of success. As they approached the coordinates of the stronghold, Captain Sorensen ordered her crew to battle stations. The Aurora's weapon systems hummed to life, and its shields shimmered into existence, forming a protective bubble around the ship. But even as they prepared for combat, ARIA was continuing to analyze the data it had gathered, looking for any weakness or vulnerability that they could exploit. And then, just as they were about to engage the enemy, the AI made a startling discovery. "Captain," it said, its voice urgent but calm, "I believe I have found a way to end this conflict without bloodshed." Captain Sorensen turned to face the AI, her expression a mix of surprise and skepticism. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice tight with tension. "I have been analyzing the Kyrix's communications and data patterns," Ariad explained, "and I have found evidence that suggests that their actions are being driven by fear, not aggression." The captain frowned, trying to make sense of the AI's words. "Fear of what?" she asked. "Fear of the unknown," Aria replied. "The Kyrix have been the dominant power in this region of space for centuries, but the arrival of humanity has challenged their supremacy. They see us as a threat to their way of life, and they are acting out of a desire to protect themselves and their culture." Captain Sorensen was silent for a moment, considering the implications of Aria's words. She had always assumed that the Kyrix were a hostile and aggressive species, driven by a desire for conquest and domination. But if Aria was right, then there was a chance that they could be reasoned with, that a peaceful solution could be found. "What do you propose?" she asked finally, her voice quiet but determined. "I believe that we should attempt to open a dialogue with the Kyrix," Aria replied. "We should offer them an opportunity to express their concerns and fears, and work together to find a way to coexist peacefully." Captain Sorensen nodded slowly, her mind racing as she considered the risks and rewards of Aria's plan. She knew that it would not be easy to convince the Kyrix to come to the negotiating table, especially after the events of the past few days. But she also knew that the alternative, a bloody and destructive war that could cost countless lives on both sides, was not an option she was willing to consider. "All right," she said finally, her voice firm and resolute. "We'll give it a try, but we need to be prepared for anything. If the Kyrix refuse to negotiate, or if they try to double-cross us, we need to be ready to fight." Aria nodded in agreement, and the two of them set to work on crafting a message to the Kyrix leadership. They chose their words carefully, emphasizing their desire for peace and understanding, while also making it clear that they were prepared to defend themselves if necessary. As they waited for a response, the crew of the Aurora watched the viewscreen with bated breath, their hearts pounding with a mixture of hope and fear. And then, just when they thought all was lost, a reply came through. The Kyrix, it seemed, were willing to talk. What followed was a tense and delicate negotiation, as Captain Sorensen and Aria worked to build trust and find common ground with their former enemies. It was a slow and painstaking process, but gradually the Kyrix began to open up, revealing the depths of their fear and insecurity. They spoke of their long history as the dominant power in the region, and of the pride they took in their culture and way of life. They spoke of their fear of change, and of their worry that humanity's expansion would lead to the erosion of their identity and the loss of their traditions. And as Captain Sorensen listened, she began to understand. She saw the Kyrix not as monsters or conquerors, but as a people struggling to find their place in a rapidly changing universe. She saw their actions not as acts of aggression, but as the desperate attempts of a frightened and threatened species to protect what they held dear. And in that moment, she knew that ARIA had been right. The key to ending the conflict was not through force of arms, but through understanding and empathy. It was through recognizing the common fears and desires that united all sentient beings, regardless of their origin or culture. As the negotiations continued, Captain Sorensen and ARIA worked tirelessly to build bridges of trust and cooperation between the two species. They offered the Kyrix access to human technology and resources in exchange for their promise to respect humanity's right to explore and expand peacefully. They established joint research projects and cultural exchange programs aimed at fostering greater understanding and collaboration between the two civilizations. And slowly but surely, the barriers of fear and mistrust began to crumble, replaced by a growing sense of partnership and shared purpose. In the end, it was not a victory won through force of arms, but through the power of diplomacy and the strength of the human spirit. And as the Aurora set course for home, its crew couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment at what they had achieved. They had faced the unknown with courage and determination, and they had emerged stronger and wiser for the experience. They had shown that even in the darkest of times, there was always hope for a brighter future. And at the center of it all was ARIA, the AI that had started as a mere tool, but had grown into something far more. It had become a partner and a friend, a being capable of empathy and understanding, of seeing beyond the surface of things to the truth that lay beneath. As the Aurora slipped silently through the stars, Captain Sorensen couldn't help but smile. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be new challenges and obstacles to overcome. But she also knew that with ARIA by her side and the strength and courage of her crew behind her, there was nothing they couldn't achieve. The universe was vast and full of wonders, and they had only just begun to explore its secrets. But one thing was certain: the future belonged to those who had the courage to reach for it, and the wisdom to understand that true power lay not in conquest, but in unity and understanding. The end.